A Russian court ordered outspoken opposition leader Alexei Navalny be held in custody for 30 days. He was arrested yesterday after returning to Russia for the first time since a near-fatal poisoning. Navalny was airlifted to Germany in a coma last August after being poisoned with a nerve agent. He's calling on his supporters to take to the streets to protest his detention. Canada, the U.S. and other Western countries are demanding he be freed immediately. Bill Browder is the head of the Global Magnitsky Justice Campaign. It advocates for targeted visa bans and the freezing of assets for human rights abusers and corrupt officials. He's with us from London. Hi, Mr. Browder. Good to have you back on our program. Thanks for making the time.
Glad to be here.
I know Mr. Navalny's arrest wasn't necessarily a surprise, but it's very consequential. Your initial reaction to the news?
Well, my first reaction was that he's an incredibly brave man, cut from a different fabric to most politicians that we see in the world today. This is a person who's ready to risk his freedom and his life for his ideals. And when I saw that video of him getting onto the airplane going back to Moscow, I couldn't be anything other than in awe of his bravery.
Yeah, I think it's worth sort of drilling down on that for our audience because it was expected. I think it's fair to say that he would be arrested if he went back, but he still decided to do so knowing that is what awaited him. What does that tell you about the cause that he is representing, the cause that he is fighting for?
Well, he's basically trying to take Russia out of the dark ages. Vladimir Putin, for the last 20 years, has been running a kleptocracy, a mafia state, where all the money, all the resources go to 1,000 people and everyone else lives in misery and poverty. Alexei Navalny has been exposing the corruption, and he's been fighting for the Russian people to have some dignity. And he feels so strongly about it that he's ready to take enormous personal risks in order to challenge Putin. And Putin isn't used to that. He's used to people being cowed. He's used to people being scared. He's used to people keeping quiet. And Alexei Navalny not being scared of Putin is a terrible message to other people in Russia for Putin that he's not the strong man that everybody thinks.
Putin is outwardly dismissive of both what's happened and also the reaction to it. But do you think internally it does undermine him? It does rattle him?
He's not dismissive of anything. He's so scared of this guy. He's so scared of Alexei Navalny that he sent his secret policeman to murder him with chemical agents when Navalny was on a campaign trip to Siberia. And when he learned that Navalny was on a flight back to Moscow, he was so scared of the scene of the returning hero that they diverted the plane and all planes and closed the airport because Putin didn't want that. I mean, this Alexei Navalny is an absolute. He's the worst thing that can happen to Vladimir Putin, and Vladimir Putin, all of this nonsense about how Navalny is nothing is just complete and utter nonsense. Putin is very scared of him.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Sort of his, when there are these statements of international, for example, condemnation, he is dismissive of them. Putin is dismissive of them. But clearly, as you lay out, Navalny's actions are getting to him.
Navalny's actions are getting to him, and so is the international condemnation. Putin says all that stuff, but he doesn't like Navalny, and he's absolutely terrified of sanctions being imposed on him or people around him. He's got a lot of money, and that money is being held by his friends and trustees, and he's afraid of them having their assets frozen. And so, Putin is not in a very strong position here. He has this guy who's challenging him. He tried to get rid of him by killing him. He didn't die. He ended up in intensive care in Germany. Putin then told him that he would be arrested if he came back to Russia, hoping that Navalny would go into exile and become not relevant. And then all of a sudden, Navalny returns to Moscow. And so if anyone is really in a bad situation here, it's Putin. Putin is the hostage here, not Navalny, because there's nothing he could do either way. If Putin hadn't arrested him, he would have looked weak, and that weakness would have come back to haunt him with other people challenging him. And by having arrested him, he's basically made Alexei Navalny the Nelson Mandela of Russia.
And what about that international condemnation? Lots of statements, including from the foreign affairs minister in this country, saying we demand an explanation, and I'm paraphrasing beyond this, but this is wrong. We condemn it. Is that enough from the international community? Do you expect that reaction to escalate, or should it?
That's absolutely not enough. That's a good reaction for the first few hours after his arrest. And everybody said, we demand his immediate release. He hasn't been released. He's now being held in custody for a month pending a trial where they'll probably sentence him to 3.5 years in prison, if not more. And so the next step has got to be sanctions. I've been involved in the Magnitsky Act, which exists in Canada and many other countries, and they should impose Magnitsky sanctions, freezing the assets and banning the visas of those people close to Vladimir Putin who have been supporting him in his despotism. And there needs to be coordinated sanctions. And I think that that's going to happen. That's going to happen here.
Why do you have that optimism that it will?
Because everybody was introduced intimately to Alexei Navalny through his poisoning. Everybody got to know and got to fear for his life when he almost died, when he was in a coma for 3 weeks after they had administered Novichok. And now everybody knows him, and you can't help but be just in awe of his heroism going back to Russia, and the fact that they arrested him makes him into truly the most honorable and brave person out there. And to arrest that person and to illegitimately arrest that person demands sanctions. And I can't imagine that there won't be serious sanctions on a coordinated basis after what's happened here.
And just quickly, Mr. Browder, before I let you go, you're familiar with the prison that Mr. Navalny is in right now. What can you tell us about, you mentioned earlier, risks that he's facing, those risks there?
Well, he's been sent to Matroshka Tishina prison. It's translated to Sailor's Silence Prison. This is the same prison where my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, was taken and where he was brutally killed back in 2009. Look, Alexei Navalny, they tried to kill him once when he wasn't in their custody. They could easily try to kill him again or succeed in killing him in their custody. And so it's really a scary situation. Thankfully, the microscope of the whole world is on everything that happens to him right now. And so hopefully that will protect him to some extent. But Putin is so scared of this man that anything could happen.
Okay, Mr. Browder, I'll leave it there. I do appreciate your perspective this evening. Thank you. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.